Hello, welcome to the next episode of Next Creators. Today we have Orrin from QSTN.
Thank you. Hello, hello.
Nice to see you here. Maybe we can start by giving a little bit of a background on what is that you're building right now.
Of course. So QSTN, pronounced question, is a blockchain-enabled market research portal. Users answer 5 multiple choice questions a day. They earn 1 credit per question that they've answered, and then they can spend these credits within our digital ecosystem for NFTs and other virtual goods that we offer in the question marketplace.
That's awesome. Maybe we can start first with your background. Where did you grow up?
New York. I'm a New York baby. I've lived in the city and upstate. I went to NYU for college, and I currently live in Queens, Far Rockaway.
That's cool. What were you passionate about growing up, when you were growing up, as well as when you went to school?
When I was 15, I wanted to be an architect for a long time. When I got a little bit older, I really became in love with the internet. I've been self-releasing my own music since I was 15. And so I just knew that I wanted to do something that related to tech and to entertainment. And so I feel like I've had that vision since I was a kid. And it's beautiful that society has evolved and tech has evolved to where, blockchain can incorporate some of the things that I love, and I can bring the things that I love into blockchain.
hmm And when you were growing up and starting to produce your own music, how was it at that point in time? Maybe you can describe what was the music industry as a musician entering the scene. Like, what can you rely on?
That's a good question. The music industry at the time was very, I would want to say, there were gates, right? There were a lot of gatekeepers. I feel like there were less ways to get out your sound, less ways to get out your music. There wasn't TikTok. SoundCloud at the time was very new. And so that was how I got my initial following, was putting out my music on the streaming platform that luckily there were creators on it who liked my art. And so it's been interesting to see how music has evolved, the sound. And now we have a lot more tools than when I was 15 to kind of get out your music and to be heard. And it's beautiful because energy and power is coming back to the creator, and that's how it should be, because we put out music, we put out art, we make Spotify rich, but we get paid barely a cent per stream. And so I think blockchain is going to be part of that. Web3 is going to be part of that revolution.
hmm And were you able to find some sustainable revenue stream as a musician?
Depends on what you mean by sustainable, but did I make money from my music? Yes. I've been featured in NBA 2K. I went on Dr. Phil as a cyborg from the future, and I've had a bunch of other things. But what sustainable for us is something that's intergenerational, right? Like Bitcoin is intergenerational wealth. And so when you start to compare that, what you have, to Bitcoin, you try to structure yourself better for more long-term growth, for scaling. And so that's where we're at right now.
hmm And how and when did you encounter like Web3? What was the first encounter?
So I was in college, and one of my friends basically was like, you got to hear about this thing called Ethereum. It was $90 at the time. And my friends, it was a very, very different time. There were still ICOs at the time, right? Like Bitcoin and Ethereum were two of the biggest. Litecoin was probably number 3 or number 4. XRP, Neo. It was a completely different field. But I heard about cryptocurrencies and I just fell in love. To me, I compare hip hop to cryptocurrencies because each crypto has its own rules, its own style, its own blockchain, its own governance, and rappers have their own slang, their own culture, and it's based on where they're from, the people around it. And so I love the collectability behind it and just getting into the niche worlds behind these things.
hmm And what changed since then in your observation of the industry since those early days?
I think we're finding different ways to bring utility. I think back in 2017, it was about ICOs. It was just crypto this, blockchain this, and people just raised millions of dollars. Now people are a bit more skeptical. Why should I buy your NFT? What's your roadmap? What's going to be the utility? Can I use these in the metaverse? And so I think people are getting smarter. And so people actually have to deliver on those promises. And so I'm excited to see the new use cases.
hmm Maybe you can tell us a bit more about also your experimentation with media and content and overall, like what is Cyborg Orrin? What do you post online, generally speaking?
Of course. So I graduated from NYU in 2017. In between 2017 and 2020, I worked in entertainment. I went on Dr. Phil and I kind of created a cyborg from the future persona. And so a lot of people watching this interview might know me as a cyborg. And at the end of 2020, I kind of was upset. I have thousands, maybe millions of followers. But as a cyborg, I felt like there was a disconnect between what I promised people to save the planet and how much I could bring that into reality. And so After speaking to Neil deGrasse Tyson, there's an interview on my YouTube channel where you can watch it. He basically spoke about how data is a human rights problem, that when you're on Facebook and Instagram, you're using this free software, but they're going to take all your data and profit. And so I've just been thinking about ways to bridge that problem, and that was kind of what birthed Question.
Hmm. How did you, by the way, bring Neil deGrasse Tyson into your project?
Just an email reach out. I was really surprised that his booking agent got back to me. She says, he's writing a book right now, but reach out in the fall and we'll set it up. And, it was just as simple as that. Very nice person, very knowledgeable, definitely poked some fun at me. And I'm grateful that he took a chance to speak on my platform.
That's cool. And also, when did you encounter like Near, and also like what was your impression?
So as a cyborg from the future, I also release music and I have some music videos on my YouTube. Last year, in 2018, I minted my first NFTs. In 2020, those NFTs that I minted as a joke for $10 ended up selling for one whole Ethereum. And I said, wow, I knew that NFTs were blowing up. I knew there was a lot of money in it, but until somebody bought a GIF of me as a cyborg, I didn't see the whole insanity behind actually putting out my own NFTs. Once I saw that there was demand for it and that people might be willing to buy some of the things I put out as tokenized assets, I wanted to mint my own NFTs. And so I spoke to almost all of the big marketplaces. I spoke to Mintable, I spoke to Rarible, I spoke to OpenSea. And the team that impressed me the most was Mintbase. They spoke to me and they said, look, when you mint an NFT, the metadata is only specific to the marketplace. So if you mint an NFT on Rarible, all the metadata, if you take that NFT off of Rarible, you're going to lose that. And so Mintbase explained to me how their technology is superior, how Near is proof of stake, and how they're environmentally friendly, and the benefits of working with a protocol such as Near. And that got me into the Near ecosystem. So I dropped my first NFTs on Mintbase. We did a virtual event in Crypto Voxels, which is also on my YouTube channel. And then they ended up having me perform in Berlin for Wildemare, which was a hybrid virtual event festival. And then they even had me come out to NearCon, where I debuted Question in the metaverse. So it's been a journey, and I'm super grateful to have worked with Mintbase and that initial touch point.
Yeah, it's amazing. So maybe we can start talking a little bit more about QSTN. So how did you decide to focus on this particular problem?
So I was inspired because originally there is a cryptocurrency called Pi Network. I know people have different opinions about it, but what I found interesting about the Pi Network is it's basically a mobile app. You download the mobile app, and once a day you press a button, and that's your mining participation. And you earn a percentage of Pi per day every time you click the button. And that was a proof of concept. It says people want to be paid in cryptocurrency, right? People want to earn crypto, but a lot of people are scared to put up their credit cards. They're scared to understand how to start. And Pi gives you an easy way to get in and to become part of the network. And it was also a proof of concept that people will take a daily action for cryptocurrencies. And so I kind of structured Question around, well, if people were to answer one question a day or 5 questions a day, what else can we offer to keep them in this marketplace, to keep them in this ecosystem? And from there, I've just been, it started out as a basic idea, but data, there's a bunch of different components to it, right? There's the storing of the data, there's the security of the data, there's the collecting of it, there's laws. And so it's just been a journey and learning and learning and learning.
Hmm. And do you see other like interesting examples of where there are like some entry points into crypto for people from like who have no idea about this, like kind of like X Infinity, like Play to Earn, or Near Crowd, like any of this kind of like similar, would you say, or?
Yeah, I would say that we're definitely very similar. Learn Near, Near Crowd. These are all things that I've looked at before starting Question because they were some of the predecessors to the play to earn model. And I would love to even work with them. And I think that that's going to be the future, right? People like gamified environments. And I think data in and of itself is boring. That's the reason why for years we've all given it up for free, is because it's just something imaginary off in the ether. But if we can tangibly show people the value of it and give people things that are worth 100 Near or 20 Near, people will say, wow, why am I giving you up my data? Why am I going to answer your survey question if you're not compensating me? And so I love that those protocols have already started to show people the value of their data and the education models.
Hmm. And what was the most challenging so far in growing QSTN?
The biggest challenge, to be honest, I feel really grateful that, we've been blessed with support from the Human Guild. We work with the Flying Rhino Guild as well. Near has been very supportive in our journey. Honestly, I want to say it's not as difficult because there are people in the near ecosystem who want to help you. We have the ecosystems team, we have the marketing guild, we have the degens. And honestly, I've just been leaning more and more into those resources. So anytime I have a question, I just ask the people around me. And I've been blessed that like, you know, it's been a smooth journey and it's not easy, right? Like it's a very complicated thing. Even sometimes my developer Eugene and I we won't code for 2 weeks. We'll just be talking, taking meetings with Verita and different companies to see how we want to integrate, but it's been fun.
Hmm. And sounds like what you're also mentioning here is kind of like almost like a different way to build businesses and applications. It's more like kind of like communal. You work like there's no like corporation that you're building in a sense, right?
Exactly. Which is why we even, we're considering turning Question into a DAO or into a foundation to just emphasize that community governance and participation as well.
Hmm. And when it comes to DAOs, do you feel like it's kind of like fairly early in terms of where it is, in terms of like understanding the where it will be like on the legal side and how it will interact with physical world?
It's definitely a great space. I mean, like, luckily, well, unluckily, we're based in America. Luckily, we've incorporated our business in Wyoming, which is one of the friendliest crypto states, and they recognize DAOs as legal entities. So that is definitely going to help. But, we need the laws in America to kind of define what is and isn't a security, what is and isn't a DAO, so that we can all make sure that we're compliant. And, compliancy is one of the biggest things with us. So it's important.
Hmm. Yeah, and it seems like that slowly people coming around to this idea. Like Wyoming is definitely doing a lot. Then you have East Denver just ended. You had like Colorado governor with Vitalik talking about how Colorado wants to be the first state. Then you have Miami is thinking about it.
And there's a bunch of celebrities. This is kind of side, but there's also a bunch of celebrities that have moved to Wyoming. I know Kanye has space out there. It's very interesting how a lot of these tech hubs, people are moving from these tech hubs and going to like the middle of America and making infrastructure and economies there. So we feel the same is going to happen in Wyoming.
Hmm. And also, can you talk maybe a little bit about the evolution of NFTs, like going into like now more like generative side of it, why those are things that are exciting?
So NFTs present a multitude of opportunities, and we still feel as if the use case for a lot of them has not even been unlocked, right? Like if you're a basketball fan or a football fan, football, soccer, or American football, your ticket should be an NFT, and you should be able to keep that as a souvenir and maybe even resell it on the aftermarket because there's digital art. And so there are a lot of use cases for NFTs, and Question also wants to get into the NFT space. So besides paying you in virtual credits for your data, we're going to be offering NFTs. We're going to be putting out a generative collection so that every single NFT is unique and that you can then use it as your avatar and that you have a unique profile picture to represent you in this new playground.
And what are some of the biggest lessons would you say you learned so far as a founder, like working on QSTN?
Always know that things are going to take longer than you expect. I know in December I was hoping to finish with Question or have something out in January, and now it's February and I'm saying June, and that's not because we're slacking. It's because the scope always is more than you think, and so just take your time. And I would say just there are a lot of resources. The best thing about crypto, about Web3, and especially about Near is the community. And so I would say don't be scared to tweet somebody, don't be scared to DM them, don't be scared to join that Web3 class or that incubator and to start getting this exposure to the space.
Hmm. Maybe you can also touch a little bit on communication channels because you mentioned Twitter. What are some of the things that you find like really good intuitively for like Web3?
So for Web3 intuitively, you definitely need a Discord, right? Especially if you're doing an NFT project. This is where you can talk to your entire audience and ping them with just one button instead of seeing who's going to reach it. So Discord's important. Telegram, we just set up our two Telegram channels. And of course, Twitter, right? Like Twitter is the hub of social media and crypto activity. And so you should be tweeting. And what's also cool about Twitter is that, right now there are buzzwords, Web3, blockchain, near protocol. So, if you have a new company, start tweeting, start using these buzz phrases, and you'll see that people just liked your tweet because you said NFT in it, and you can start growing and engaging with the community.
Hmm. What do you think are the most important skill sets as a founder that are required?
I would say resilience is most important. Just even as a person, people are going to tell you no, people are going to say you can't do it. And you have to either decide if that's true or not and figure out if you want to keep going. So I would say resilience and DIY, do it yourself. I think a lot of people expect somebody else to give you the answer. They expect somebody else to do it. And as a founder, you have to do it, right? I'm grateful that I went to business school, but I manage the accounting for Question. I work with Kate from the Flying Rhino Guild for marketing. We're talking with Verita for data privacy. I do everything. And so you kind of just have to wear different hats and not complain about it, but just learn.
Hmm. Have you considered potentially having co-founder? Like, how do you think about the trade-offs on that front?
Co-founders are definitely good. And I think that, relying on people for their expertise can definitely help. In my case, it was just I just had a very specific and strong vision, and I'm grateful that my developer and my lead engineer, we kind of just see eye to eye. We talk every single morning. He's in Russia, so of course we're always trying to connect our timelines. But yeah, I'm grateful that I have a lead developer who kind of speaks my language and who not only codes but also helps me with the architecture of it. And then working with different parts of the near ecosystem to manage marketing and activation and things of the sorts.
Hmm. And maybe you can also mention some of these pieces within the community that can help. You mentioned Flying Rhino, you mentioned a couple others. Like, how do you think about like different functions that you need to kind of take care of in running a business, and what are those the support systems that kind of like are available there?
Great question. So, of course, you need marketing activation, right? You need to get the word out about your project. So, coming on podcasts, you have the Open Web Sandbox, right? You have Human Guild, their next creator podcast. So, reaching out to some of the shows that are out there, reaching out to Kate from the Flying Rhino Guild. They do a lot of social media marketing activation. We have the DGen Club. So, when you have a new announcement, they'll go ahead and make sure that everybody in the ecosystem knows about it. You have the grants team that is also giving out grants. So, Near really has an entire ecosystem for you. You just need to know where to go and asking the right people.
Hmm. And what do you think about this whole knowing where to go? Kind of like, is it more about just like asking a bunch of people and then figuring out this piece? Like, how do you think about like, because this decentralization has like the strengths and weaknesses in the sense that like, there is no single place that tells you like,
Where to go.
yeah.
That's a good point. I mean, besides just asking questions, it's about managing relationships with people, right? And keeping doors of contact open. So not just asking a person a question, but keeping a line of communication open and asking them questions as well. And when they introduce you to somebody, and also just looking up online. Honestly, a perfect resource is awesomenear.com. If you want to know a lot of the things in the ecosystem, you can go to Awesome Near and you can know what are the new NFTs, what are the new security protocols on Near, and from there you can find out who manages and runs those protocols and try and get in contact with them.
Hmm. Um, what do you think overall, just in general, about like how people maybe who like really want to join the space, do the project in space, but still kind of figuring this out, still not sure what is a new thing that Web3 brings to the table. They're kind of like still figuring it out. I have a lot of friends who are like still in this boat. So like, how would you describe this to people?
How would we describe Web3? Web3 is a chance for us to have a more equitable interaction on the internet, right? Right now, I have almost 17,000 followers on Instagram, right? And if tomorrow Instagram decides to shut down my account and say you have 0 followers, there was no proof. Using these new Web3 protocols, we can create systems where things are publicly verifiable, where I don't need to trust Instagram, where I don't need to rely on a centralized authority, but the code ends up being the governing model with transparency encoded throughout. And so it's a chance to take back the internet with control, right? People complain artists never make any money, every artist is broke. And that's because we're using tools that are only profiting Apple Music and Spotify and these big corporations. We need to start building tools that are for artists and by artists. And so Web3 is a chance for everybody to, that idea that you had that you thought nobody would like, it's your chance to try it. People are giving out grants to do it. There's resources, and now is the time to do it. I believe that Web3 is a technological revolution in the same sense that the internet was in the 90s, and that this is going to be a similar version of that.
Hmm. And how do you think, you mentioned briefly on generative art, how do you think about like bringing Web2 users into Web3? So, because sometimes it still feels like kind of self-contained a bit, like people who have the wallets, they're participating. How do you bring like your mom into the space, for example?
Honestly, that's a great question because that is my goal, right? Like I live with people in Queens, Far Rockaway. I hang out with people of different walks of life, and I think that there's value in crypto and in blockchain for all of them. And so for Question, that's what we're trying to do is we're trying to allow Web2 users to still feel familiar, but to have the benefits of a Web3 protocol. And so I believe that that's going to be what we're going to see in these next 6 months to a year is instead of making Web3 products for Web3 users, it's going to be Web3 products for Web2 users because crypto is still small. We need to start bringing more people in. And until we figure out what they like and what are their barriers to entry, there's still going to be a cap on how big crypto can be.
Yep. And what are some of the ways to do this? You think it's all about UX or generative art, those kinds of tools, or like innovative marketing campaigns? How do you think about that?
I'd say it's a mixture. I think it's incentive, right? Like people need a reason to stop using what they're using to come to your platform. I think it's also ease of use, right? Like we know that there's private keys and there's wallets. And, do people want to deal with that? If you've never had a wallet before, are you going to really remember that this 12-word phrase, if you lose it, you never. So people need to be conscious of some of the problems with Web2 users and trying to either hide it under the hood or to basically walk their hands through it so that they know what they're doing.
Hmm. And when it comes to your friends, both online and offline, what is the current sentiment with them in terms of Web3?
There's still a gray area with some of my friends. I'm grateful that some of my friends are in the crypto space. Some of them work for the Near Legal Guild, but some of my friends aren't associated with Near. And so for the ones that aren't, they see the opportunity in crypto, they see the opportunity in blockchain, but they don't know where or how, right? And then of course they see people making millions of dollars off of NFTs and they become dismissive. But we need these people to understand that there's something happening here and that while that's an extreme outlier and it might not be sustainable, there is a movement here that is growing that is going to foster, I think, progress technologically.
Hmm. And how do you describe those things to your friends? Are your friends mostly also in the music space, or like from all kinds of walks of life? Like how do they also respond to it maybe differently?
All walks of life, and that's the reason why I enjoyed the Pi app so much, because whenever I want to get my friends into crypto, I would just give them the Pi app and I would just say, hey, download this app, you press this button once a day, you become part of the network, your action validates the network, and you get paid for validating the network. And that's a simple way to explain things to people. And so that's the reason why Question is going to be taking a similar format and why our goal is to get Web2 users into Web3.
And the mindset basically here is you do the actual work that's required, and you get kind of rewarded for it.
Exactly.
And seems like, yeah, from what I observed with like X Infinity 2 and Near Crowd and other places, it can be almost like a ramp up into the crypto economy where people can like find new ways to learn and earn afterwards, right?
And that's the goal, is that we want to be one of these. We want to be one of the, I'll be transparent, we want to be one of the biggest onboarding tools for the Near ecosystem. And I was really inspired by an article about RuneScape. I don't know if you remember that, but RuneScape was a game online, right? And you could spend hours, da 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 da. What was really cool about RuneScape was that they had the intro island. And by the time you got through the intro island, you understood how to play the game so that when you got to mainland, you knew what all the buttons did. I'm trying to take a similar approach with questions so that when you make your account and you get onboarded, we're going to show you how the system works. We're going to get you a Near wallet. We're going to get you some points, and you're going to have the chance to buy an NFT all by the time you've created your account, so that people really have their hands held, and that by the time they're ready to start answering their second batch of questions, they know how it works. They've already bought an NFT. They've already had a wallet.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I was wondering, like, so what kind of parting words of advice do you have for the audience in case they're still kind of a bit hesitant in terms of like where to get started, or why should they even bother?
Um, I think just learn about the space. I think not enough people have enough like intro materials. I would say a good YouTuber to research about cryptos is Coin Bureau. He even has two videos on Near. The first one was old, but the second one he updated and it's very informative. Maybe check out a Coin Bureau video. Maybe look at the film Banking on Bitcoin, which kind of shows you the landscape when Bitcoin was created and how we've come from there, you know? And I would also say don't be scared to take a class. There are crypto incubators, there are crypto, accelerator programs, and that's helped me out a lot too. We started 2020 in a Verizon incubator, and then we ended up going into the Gitcoin incubator. We did our first hackathon with Filecoin, and now we're in a Filecoin accelerator. And these accelerators really help to contextualize the space, not just being a startup, but being a startup in Web3, fundraising, networking. And so I would say, just dive in there. There are workshops, there are conferences, and just get yourself in there and see. And I guess my last point is like, again, I've been in the space for a while, but to go to NearCon was truly a highlight of 2020 because the pandemic started and I was quarantined, for at least a year, very, very intensely. And during that year, that was when we had the whole DeFi summer of 2020 going into 2021. And so I was on my computer trading these cryptocurrencies, right? And my friends probably all thought that I was crazy, learning about Near, doing these NFTs. And when I went to NearCon, I got to see things that I'd been working on for a year on my computer in real life. And I got to meet people in real life. And that just shows you, I think, the community and how serious this is. And so I think if people all got to see how beautiful that event was, they would all be ready to run in as well.
That's amazing. And where can our audience also find more information about you or QSTN online?
Of course. Well, my name's Orrin. You can follow me on Instagram at Real Orrin, YouTube at Real Orrin, Twitter at Real Orrin, and I'm the CEO and founder of Question, QSTN. Our website is qstn.us. You can join the waitlist. We are basically going to open up testnet in March. We're going to release some NFTs in April or May, and then we're going to try and mainnet in June. So look out for that. Follow us on socials, QSTN US, and yeah.
Thank you for coming today.
Of course. Thank you, Sasha.